Well, welcome back. We're now in Unit 4, where we're going to be starting our own project for a golf hole. So it's miniature golf, and of course we're going to do this step by step. So remember, there's the decomposition of the project. So you should think, what are the things that I would need in a video game in order to make this? And this does take a lot of thought, even though they've kind of given us a little hint on what they want. So of course, nothing happens in a video game unless it's been coded to happen, which is why it does take a lot of thought initially. So you should think, for example, just to start, right? You want a background. What color do you want the background? Um, we're going to be putting on grass, I would assume. So you need grass. You want to make sure that the ball doesn't go outside the limits of the grass. So you probably need walls. You need a hole. You need a putter. You need a ball. And if you want any obstacles, of course, that's something that you would do on your own. But in any case, all of that kind of stuff is stuff that you have to think about just in terms of getting it on there. Once you get stuff on, then you can start working with, oh, do I want to move it? How do I want to move it? Where do I want to move it? How fast do I want it to move? Is there any friction? This kind of thing. So a lot of thought. Okay, now you can see I've already set up my project. So I have universal variables, and I've already started with the ability for you to put in the mouse coordinates if you want them. Okay, so in the setup function, I'm running the mouse coordinates function, which is down here. For me, it's right now between lines 28 through 36, even though that's going to change even in this project. And then on line 22, we're changing the mouse coordinates for every frame. So this is not all that we're going to need either in the draw function or the setup function, and it's not the only custom function we're going to be using either. So you want to keep that in mind. We're going to be adding a lot of stuff right here. So right now, with all the stuff, I've got 36 lines of code, pretty legit. If you take away the blanks, maybe you're looking at 30 lines of code. And I've given myself a little extra space down here, which is good. Now what you'll notice as I make new functions at the top of my custom functions list, which right now is starting on line 26, I put any new functions above it at the very top of that list. So as I make functions and more functions, I can tell how old they are based on their location of my custom functions list. Okay, so this is the p5play structure. First you have the universal variables, you got the setup function. Underneath that, you're going to have the draw function, and then underneath that, any customized functions. And like I said, I'm not going to be using the mouse coordinates, so actually on line 3, I'm just going to make this a note. Line 11 also a note. Line 22 is a note. Notice I'm not actually deleting it. And then lines 28, well now 29 through 37, I'm going to make that a note with slash asterisk. And you notice as soon as I put that asterisk in, it turned that all gray. But I don't want everything else to be a note, so I'm just going to do that in reverse with asterisk slash underneath it on line 38, and that will change the what did I do here? Yeah, that changed everything here into a note. Now underneath that, if I wanted to, I could put a function in here, and you can see it now has color, but at least these lines right here are a note. So if you have lots of lines that you're like, you know what, I just want to take all those lines away as a note. I don't want to delete them because I do want that code in case maybe in the future I do want to see that stuff or use it in my program. I can just make all those lines a note with slash asterisk, and then at the very end of the note, asterisk slash. So with this, you're going to have to put in your own setup function and your own draw function. And if you want to keep the coordinates, you've already seen the code. You can go back to the video and pause it. Okay, so with this then, let's go and start this assignment. All we're trying to do is set up the canvas. So that's what we are going to do. Now in setting up the canvas, let's go ahead and make the canvas first. So this, of course, just like we've seen before, NEW space, and this should be capitalized C, capital C, and then all lowercase ANVAS. Open parentheses. We're going to make ours, looks like 450. I'm I don't know, I'm gonna actually make mine 500 by 550. How about that? And then close with the parentheses and then the semicolon. Make sure you got the comma in between the two numbers, otherwise it's gonna think it's one number. So this is at least gonna give us a canvas. Now if you run the program, and just like I've said before, if you ever put in a new line of code, don't continue until you know that it runs correctly. If you have an error or if the screen goes blank, then you shouldn't continue with your code until you fix it. Now this is not actually going to change anything because the default color is white, your screen is white, so you're not actually going to see that canvas, which means right now in setting up the canvas, I now want to actually give myself a background color. So first, before that, we should always clear each frame inside the draw function, because remember the draw function is running continuously at a rate of 60 frames per second. So we're going to clear each frame with the clear command, CLEAR, open parentheses, close parentheses, semicolon. And that's good enough to clear it. But again, here's the line of code. You should run it to make sure there's no errors, but it's still not going to show anything. So I'm going to give myself a couple extra lines here. We're going to make the background. Now that G in background is very important because, again, it's not like a ton of students miss this, but enough do where they'll do background like this. It's just they missed the G. Okay, so there at the bottom, line 22, BACKGROUND. Background, and then you got the open parentheses, and then quotations, and then you can come in here and change this to whatever color you want. You can choose a color in here. I think deep sky blue looks pretty good, and again, they've got the hex code and the actual name of the color. Either one's going to work. I'm going to use the hex code for it, 00BFFF. Oh, don't forget your pound sign there. See, now I've forgotten it. 00BFFF. Okay. 00BFFF, close quotations, close parentheses, semicolon. Now if I've done this correct, let's just make sure that I do have this correct. I go to the hex color picker, and let's see if this, yeah, there it is. That's going to be this color right here, which I think looks pretty good for a background. And that's all we need for this. Now if you're thinking, well, Mr. Sal, that wasn't very much work, it's not supposed to be very much work. As we do each assignment, we're going to start building up. We're going to start in the back, kind of like a Bob Ross painting. He starts with his background, and then he kind of moves forward in terms of layers. Okay, so the background is the furthest back layer that we can get. But this is a very nice setup for a video game that we are going to be creating. And again, it's the decomposition that we're concerned about. Can you take the code, can you take a video game and then piece by piece put it together until you have a functional video game? Because if you can, this is how you essentially will do it. Now you may not do it in the exact same order, especially as you get more experience, but the idea is always going to be the same. So run that program, make sure this works, make sure there's no errors. We did not put in very much code. We did put in the setup function, we put in the draw function, yes, we put in the canvas, we put in the clear command and also the background. But you can see down here, I didn't actually use the mouse coordinates code, which of course you can use. So to show everything, well, that's a little small. Let's see, I got a little bit of extra space, a little too big now. There we go. That is all the code that I have right now. That's all the code that I need right now. For the next assignment, now that we have a canvas, of course, we're going to start putting in, geez, I want to say the grass in the hole, but maybe it's the grass in the walls. Either way, we're gonna do it piece by piece, but that's good enough to get us started for this assignment. So thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.